Okay, well, good morning to another episode of Command and Control, the podcast that from XenTegra about networks and security. I'm your host, Aaron Banner, and today I have the privilege of being joined by Martin from Versa Networks, which is a SASE company, basically. Martin, good morning. How you doing?
I'm really well, Aaron. Thanks so much for the invitation. It's great to be talking to you this morning.
Yeah, so for our listeners out there, Martin Mackay is from Versa Networks. He's the Chief Revenue Officer for Versa. Martin leads the Versa Global Sales Organization and overall go-to-market. He's got a track record of driving growth in security, networking, and SaaS enterprise software. Prior to joining Versa, Martin's held many senior leader positions with companies such as Proofpoint, CA Technologies, VeriSign, Northgate Arinzo, PeopleSoft, and a few others. And he's lived in multiple countries over his life, and as I understand it, speaks multiple languages. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about that. I think that's fairly interesting coming from a technology background.
Yeah, I guess if you go back to the dawn of time, I have a degree in modern languages. And so, my majors were French and Spanish, and I've maintained those over the years. So, as I like to say, insofar as I can sell at all, I can sell in French and Spanish as effectively as I can in English. And then, German and Italian, I can at least make myself understood. So and create relationships. But I found that useful over the years because ultimately, Aaron, as technology changes, you and I guess, are more or less of the same era. We've seen a lot of technology change over the years, but I think the one truism that still applies is that people buy from people. People buy from people they know, like, and trust, and therefore, if you can build a relationship and do that, particularly in Europe, in the diverse languages, it does make a difference.
Yeah, my military background had me in Germany for about 4 years. And, I like to say I can speak just enough to get by. I think I can order at a restaurant and things like that. I'm fascinated by the fact that you know so many languages. But I thoroughly enjoyed my time in Europe.
Yeah, that's great. And, I know you've had a really impressive military career. And yeah, as you say, you have a broader experience than just maybe the narrow technology focus, which I think is really important because, as you and I are doing the job we do, taking ultimately technology solutions to customers, of course, the core technology is key, but ultimately it's about having a broader understanding of the outcomes that the customer is going to achieve. And as I like to say to my team, customers buy for their reasons, not for ours. And if you get a broader picture of what's motivating the customer to make the technology selection, then you can try and orient your value proposition towards that. And I think that's probably, if I've learned anything about selling over the last 30 plus years, it's probably that.
Yeah, in my time, I started in the military in 1991, and networking was, it wasn't much of a thing at the time. Very, very basic. But by the time I left in, let's see, 2023, very, very different, vastly different from when I first came in. And so, as things matured, probably the last 10 to 15 years of my career, we moved from strictly network security to cybersecurity and identified the word cybersecurity. And SASE fits right into that. I like to say that it's not network security, it's secure networking. And so I'm glad to have a discussion with you about SASE today. And if we can maybe dig in a little bit, understand Versa a little better. There's lots of great companies out there. Versa is very different from many of them. And I'd like to just kind of dig in and have our listeners understand a little bit more about Versa Networks, as they may not be familiar. So can you share just a little bit about who Versa is, where Versa came from, and what you do?
Sure. So I think there are probably three things to bear in mind with Versa, sort of basic knowledge 101. The first is, we grew up as a secure SD-WAN vendor, founded about 12 years ago, and knew great commercial success initially through selling to service providers who then delivered networking service on our platform, and then more recently through the sort of traditional core enterprise channel as well, where we've won a lot of really high-profile logos. And I think that evolution, as you said, from networking to secure networking and security and networking, I think in many ways we have a competitive advantage because we understand the management of traffic better than any other competitor. So that's the first differentiation. The second is that we genuinely operate on a single platform. And so everything that we deliver is on the same operating system. So you've got the same management plane, control plane, etc. So you've got that proverbial single pane of glass, and you've also got the single data lake. And I think that's a real differentiation with, as you talked about, Aaron, the convergence of networking and security. And then finally, all of this is adding up to a picture where we're pretty fast growing. We've got a CAGR of about 40%. We have a presence now in 10, 12 countries worldwide, but we have partners selling in many more, and I think we're deployed in over 100 countries, actually. So we've got a global presence. We're operating with some of the world's largest brands, and we are enjoying real success based on the core technology value proposition, allied to some of the things you and I were talking about before. So one of the other things to bear in mind, which I think is really important, just in terms of our philosophy, Aaron, working with XenTegra, is we are 100% channel. When I joined Versa nearly 3 years ago, on the first day, I said, here's a principle, guys, that we will adhere to. We do every deal with the channel. And whether that's through the service provider side or the reseller side. So that's really important for XenTegra to understand. We're very committed to growth through and with the channel.
Yeah, I mean, Versa has been a great company for us to partner with. We've really enjoyed learning with you, understanding, how SASE is moving, and just the partnership has been great. It really has. And the support that we get from Versa for all of our many events that we do, through all of our marketing, it really is second to none.
Thank you. Well, we appreciate the relationship very much.
Right. Versa's been around for quite a while, 12 years, I think, almost as long as XenTegra has been around. And SASE as a framework, I don't know exactly when it came to be, but I know that, for me, I was still in the Army. It was about 2021 when I really started hearing the term SASE. And then we started to understand how that fit into, our architecture, into our business model for the Army. And then really started to dig into how we, incorporate that into what we're doing. But given that you've been around for 12 years, I think as I get around, I would say people are just recently starting to hear about Versa, just starting to get to know who Versa is. And so I'm just curious, I know, again, 12 years, so I'm just wondering, how did that path go, and why is it that people are just starting to hear about Versa the past few years?
It's a great question, and I'll give you 2 or 3 core reasons. The first is, as we started on this journey, and even in many ways today, big focus has been on product and engineering, which is a good thing because it means we're delivering value to customers. But if you're spending money on that, you don't necessarily have a huge amount of money to spend on sales and marketing. And so for a long time, that was the focus. And I think also the channel that we chose, going through service providers, has meant that ultimately we know we have thousands of customers running Versa, but they may not necessarily know that they are actually running Versa because, the underlying technology is white label. But I think more recently you've seen 3 things that have come to the fore. And let's say, to a great extent allied, I suppose, to my arrival 3 years ago. I was the catalyst for this because I was really the first fully fledged CRO. There'd been a sales leader before, but this was the major step that my executive colleagues and the board made to say, okay, we really need to advance our go-to-market. So 3 things really. One is a big investment in marketing. And you've seen that even today. It's a very auspicious day for us to be talking because we've launched the Versa One platform today with, a real emphasis on that integrated platform and what we're calling universal SASE. I like to talk ad nauseum about that, of course, but a big investment in marketing, which we hadn't really made before. And we've got a great CMO and an excellent team who are still relatively new. I think that's the first reason. I think the second reason is the development of key channel partners. Again, on the retail side, we have the service providers, but working with XenTegra and others has really enabled us to win some great logos and to be more overt about the PR and the marketing that we do around those wins and building that reputation. And then finally, I think just comes back to that investment in sales presence, which we've made over the last 2 or 3 years, which we hadn't really done to any great extent before. So I think those are the 3 reasons why people are starting to hear about us. And you're right. Couple of trade shows that I did last year, RSA or InfoSec in London, if we had any traffic at all, we'd have people coming up and saying, what does Versa do? Most recently, I was at the Gartner Symposium in Orlando, and we had people come out saying, we use Versa, or I've heard of Versa, or we're evaluating Versa, which was pretty exciting and a big change. Right. So you're right in terms of that transition.
Yeah, I think the last time that you and I saw each other in person was actually at RSA, and I spent a lot of time hanging there around the Versa booth, and I will tell you there's a big buzz in the industry around SASE, and I do find a lot of people they want to know more, they want to understand it, and I don't think yet that everyone clearly understands what SASE is, and maybe we can dig into that just a little bit. I made the comment earlier that, I look at SASE as secure networking as opposed to what we currently would call network security. Yeah. And I think, because we approach networking with security in mind from the get-go, as opposed to developing and designing networks and then figuring out how to kind of wrap security around what we've built, that architecture. And I think there's been a big shift, at least I think there's a big shift coming anyway, from what I would consider traditional networking and security to SASE. And so first, why do you think that shift is here today?
Yeah, I think it's because customers are looking at 3 key business problems, and these are the things that they're trying to solve. The first is they're trying to ensure that every user, and indeed potentially their customers as they interact with the corporation, but every user has a great experience. However they're accessing the network, wherever they're accessing the network from, and whatever they're accessing on the network. User experience is right to the fore. We all have the expectations that our enterprise experience is going to be the same as using an app on our iPhone, right? And so that focus on user experience is key. So very sophisticated network management is critical. At the same time, we know about the proliferation of cyber threats. So the second issue is, how do I protect that experience? How do I protect my corporate assets? How do I protect my people? How do I secure applications, data, etc.? And the third is that although there's still an emphasis on spending money, cybersecurity, the CISO probably doesn't have the unlimited budget that maybe he or she had 3 or 4 years ago. So you've got to do all of that trying to save money. And you can't achieve those goals with the level of thinking that existed before, silo security applications, treating network and security as 2 complete network management security as 2 different problems. Fundamentally, those are 2 sides of the same coin, as you've articulated. And so you need the secure access service edge framework, philosophy, or architecture. And that's what SASE is. It's a framework, architectural philosophy. It's not a product per se, in order to solve those business problems. And those 3 business problems are the ones that customers talk to us about all the time.
Yeah, and thanks for pointing out that SASE is actually a framework, and I think there's a lot of ways to approach it. I think Versa has their own way to approach it, but within that, there's still a lot of core tenets to what makes up SASE. Well, what are the technologies that fit into a SASE model? And I think a lot of people listening still probably don't really understand what SASE is. So, can you just briefly describe, from a Versa perspective, what is SASE?
Yeah, sure. I mean, break it down, as you said, SASE isn't a SKU on the that you can issue a PO for, right? So ultimately, if you've got that philosophy of converged networking security, what are the underlying technology components? Obviously, um, on the networking side, there are a couple actually, and our definition of SASE is not just single vendor, where you've got all of these components from one vendor. It's not just unified, where effectively you've got a common architecture, not a whole set of applications that you've acquired altogether. Our definition is universal SASE because we go across not only the network from a wide area network point of view, but also the campus. So your first two key elements of universal SASE are the network management, the wide area network, SD-WAN, combined with SD-LAN. So the management of the wide area network and the campus through the same operating system. But integrated to that are the core components on the security side, secure web gateway. So just the ability to control and manage your internet traffic. Zero trust, so the next generation ability to manage access. CASB, Cloud Access Security Broker. Man, we love acronyms in this industry, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely.
But that is the protection of data and applications and traffic, cloud applications. And then you're moving into what you might call advanced SASE, which would be DLP, so data leakage protection, RBI, remote browser isolation, and of course, bridging, if you like, that chasm between networking and security. You've got next generation firewall as a baseline architecture, and the ability to pull all of that together into a single data lake so that you can understand threats and respond to threats and understand network performance, coming back to those key issues of user experience and protecting that experience. And of course, all of that leveraging as aggressively as possible AI to automate and to protect and to analyze. So those, from our point of view, those are the key components, ranging from the network management to the security management. But again, coming back to those business problems, if you don't take a view that says, to do that, I need to have an integrated solution, I need to have that proverbial single pane of glass, the single data lake, etc., and I need to have all of this powered by really, really robust AI so that ultimately my network becomes self-protecting, then you're probably missing out on the opportunities to support your business transformation. That indubitably is why anybody invests in technology in the first place.
Right. Yeah, and I think you've mentioned the word universal SASE a couple of times in this conversation, and I don't want anyone listening to this to miss what that is, to not understand what that is, and versus approach to that. So, just quite frankly, can you state kind of what the difference is between single vendor and universal SASE, and how Versa has matured that?
Absolutely. I think it's a key point. And again, I'm always wary of anyone who claims to be better, but what I like is where we claim to be different. And universal SASE is where we're indubitably different. So the definitions, the single vendor SASE are those vendors who've effectively got the components that I just articulated, ranging from networking management through to security, but have acquired them from multiple other companies. So they've bought other companies, each of which had a best of breed solution. And there may be some level of integration, or there may not. You then have unified SASE, which typically would have all of those same components, but would have the single operating system or the single view, or the integration of those components is such that there is an appearance, at least, that that it is a single platform. So that's an
Right.
evolution from single vendor to unified. And then universal has got a couple of key differentiators. As I said, first of all, it extends your security to the campus, as well as to the wide area network. And the reason why that's important is that typically, as we walk into the office, it may well be that our security profile, our security posture doesn't follow us. We may be protecting the enterprise from north-south traffic, from external traffic, but we're internal. If we've been breached in any shape or form, maybe that zero trust policy hasn't followed us. And so that's one key difference. And then I think the other aspect of universal SASE is something that really is unique to Versa, because this is patented technology, is the ability to deploy what we call SASE on SIM, which is the ability to put that security profile without an agent onto your mobile phone, so that as you're trying to interact through your mobile phone into the enterprise, your security profile is validating what you are allowed to do. And then, of course, that extends as well, which is why it's called universal, to the whole operational technology and Internet of Things. And that's really crucial, because you need to be able to protect your organization from, these relatively dumb devices that do allow potential vulnerabilities. They do represent weak points. As I like to say, if your printer is trying to talk to your accounting system, you've probably got some potential problem.
Yeah. Yeah. And thanks for the call out on the mobile phone. I think, a lot of people are concerned about, the mobile phones and what that does to their security environment. But I don't know that they take an active approach in actually addressing it. Sometimes I think they want to wish away that problem. And it's great to see Versa's approach to pulling that into that security architecture. Yeah, thanks
Yeah,
for
and that's
calling
a big differentiator for us, for sure. And that applies, to service providers, but crucially to enterprises. This is something that enterprises can use quite effectively. So that's universal SASE, Aaron. That's how we see it. And to support that, as I say, we've now announced the Versa One platform, which is just the way I look at it is it's taking all of the technology, the platform that we deliver, and packaging it into a relatively easy to understand positioning statement, so people understand how Versa is different.
Yeah. So, Martin, earlier we talked about kind of why there's this shift to SASE. And I follow what Gartner says pretty closely about SASE, just to understand the broader market out there and where security trends are headed to. And I want to say early this year, maybe late last year, Gartner was predicting 2025 kind of to be the year. And I think they said, hey, about 50% of organizations will have a strategy or a roadmap to SASE by 2025. The latest update from Gartner that I saw is 80% of organizations. So, I think it's proven out that 2025 is going to be the year of SASE. I'm having a lot more conversations about it. People have a lot more interest in it, and there's a lot more understanding around it than there was even 6 months, a year ago. I'm finding it a lot easier to have SASE conversations now than I had before. With that in mind, what is it that you think is driving this shift to SASE today?
Yeah, I think it comes back to those three things that I talked about, but also, if we go to the, sticking with the Gartner theme, the hype cycle, I think we've come out of the so-called trough of disillusionment, and I think organizations are realizing that that SASE driven architecture philosophy is going to be key. And that secondly, if by definition, the majority of organizations are not early adopters, that there is enough proof in the market that real value can be extracted from deploying the technology. So I think that's why it's a market that is really, I agree with you, shaped to take off. I think the other important thing that organizations are wary of is, we talk about universal SASE and our integrated platform, that's true, but we have very few customers who are taking a big bang approach because that just becomes too difficult. And so, a big element of the way that we talk to customers is to offer a journey to SASE, supporting the ongoing digital transformation of the enterprise, a journey to SASE over, several years, onboarding either through a revamped networking architecture or through replacing, a legacy VPN solution with zero trust, and then expanding from there. Or indeed starting with that campus capability that I talked about, and then expanding from there, deploying zero trust on at the campus level. So one of the key things that I think organizations are becoming more savvy about is having a multi-year strategy and then saying, okay, how do we embark on this to ensure that, we're not attempting to change so much in the enterprise that we fail. Those traditional monolithic projects that I grew up with in the 1990s, selling ERP, where you're spending $100 million and you're actually getting no value from it after 3 years effort. Today, that's just not something that any organization can swallow. So I think that, people are more confident in the technology, people can see the value, people can see that people have had the experience of deploying it successfully and are looking at ways in which they can map out that journey to bring value to their own enterprises.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And so, there's a lot of different people who listen to this podcast, and I want to spend a few minutes focusing on, I think, what would be most valuable to some of our clients that are looking into SASE, trying to understand SASE, and then looking at vendor selection. And we've said the term SASE, and I think really there's probably three core elements within that, and that's SD-WAN. A little more on the traditional side. There's SASE, and then there's the SSE markets.
Mm-hmm.
And you have some very viable competitors out there, that offer very similar things. Matter of fact, Gartner released a report about 4 weeks ago, I think it was, and it didn't rank the top 10 SASE providers in the market, but it identified the top 10, and Versa was one of those top 10. And so, looking at your competitors out there, I would just like for people to understand, what is it that differentiates Versa from the others?
That's a great question, Aaron. And there are other companies to consider than Versa, although of course we'd be delighted if everyone just ultimately chose us.
Absolutely.
But I'll answer it by I'll answer your very good question by referring to what a customer told me recently. This was a new customer we'd won. I hadn't been involved in the sales cycle, but I was asked to come in and meet them sort of after the event, as a sort of executive meet and greet. And I asked the customer the question, why did you choose Versa? And customer said three things. The first is that when they spoke to our reference customers wax lyrical about the experience of using Versa technology and working with Versa. And as they put it, and these are their words, not mine, they got the impression that our competitors' reference customers tolerated using their technology. The second thing they said was that the customers said universally two things about the experience of working with Versa. One was that Versa delivered on promises, and that secondly, because we deliver very complex technology, when when it goes wrong, and it can go wrong, Versa was always there to help put it right as quickly as possible. And I think that customer centricity is one of our key characteristics. And then finally, they said, look, we know that we may not buy everything from Versa. We've got some incumbent competitors already. But what we like is what I was referring to before, which is that the fact that we could go on this 5-year journey and we could adopt the entire Versa platform, which clearly would have benefits in terms of cost saving and in terms of, operational efficiency, etc. So although we're not obliged to adopt everything, we like the fact that we could. And what they particularly like, and this is, I think, ultimately one of our key differentiators, is Versa's innovation. And I think, if you choose to work with Versa, what you get is a company that, first of all, really cares about your success, customer success above everything else. And secondly, is incredibly innovative in the technology that we bring to market. And I think those are the two things that I like people to say about Versa when we're not there.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. Are there any particular verticals or markets where a Versa solution would fit better than others?
I think in many ways the technology we bring to market solves the business problems that are universal, but where we've had success, indubitably, is in banking or finance, in retail, in manufacturing, in energy, and in public sector. It's a matter of record that the US federal government, the DISA, Defense Information Security Agency, has become a Versa customer, and we're extremely proud of that. That relationship is expanding. So, those are the 4 or 5 verticals where I think we're really strong. But in many ways, SASE is an architecture philosophy. It applies whatever your business, because, ultimately, coming back to those 3 key things: how do I create a great user experience? How do I secure that user experience? And how do I do it with, ever decreasing total cost of ownership? Those are universal truths, whatever business you're running.
Right. I wasn't aware of your relationship with DISA. Based on my background, I spent, almost my entire life working in, with, or around DISA.
Right.
And that's a massive organization. They have a very key role to play, not just in the Army, but in the military at large, and in the entire system. So that's impressive. I did not know that, and I'm very happy to hear that.
Yeah, so you'll be able to tell from my accent that my interaction with our federal business, although I'm very proud of it, is relatively limited because I carry the wrong passport really to go have many of those detailed discussions. At a certain point, it's I'm less welcome than our excellent SVP North American Enterprise, who leads that business for us. But yet we happily spend time offline talking to you about our DISA relationship with your military record. We're really proud of that, and it's true of the public sector engagements that we have worldwide. Your technology is tested to the nth degree, and the procurement cycles are long, and so you've got to have both incredibly robust technology and a lot of patience. And I think we've demonstrated both of those. So we see the North American federal, the US federal market as a big growth opportunity for us, for sure.
Yeah, the process of getting from start to when you're working with an organization like DISA, it's a very stringent vetting process. Takes quite a while. So kudos to Versa for being able to get there. Hey, I'm gonna throw you a bit of a curveball, and this is not a simple one, but we'll work it out. So you mentioned the word AI earlier, talked about your how AI enables Versa, and companies throw out the word AI all the time. And sometimes I feel like they understand what it is that they're talking about when they say it, and sometimes I don't necessarily get that they do. So
Yeah.
can you go a little bit into how AI plays into the Versa platform?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I was attending a presentation to a prospective customer the other day where our head of AI was talking about how we've actually been using that technology probably for 5 or 6 years. But I think there are 3 or 4 things that we do. On the networking side, we have an AI product called Vanny, which is our network intelligence analytical module that's effectively going to answer questions about, where are there performance problems or why are those performance problems existing. Across the platform, we've integrated ChatGPT so that you have access to, pretty much not just the documentation, but, the entire sort of community of knowledge, if you like, around Versa products to ask questions about how do I do X, Y, Z. And then on the security side, we're using it, around a number of areas, but I think particularly UEBA, doing that analysis and trying to accelerate the root cause analysis of security threats. We're using it in our sandboxing and associated analytics, and we're also using it just to for the core threat protection that we offer.
Right.
Identifying potential threats and blocking them based on pattern recognition, etc. So for us, AI is right at the cornerstone of the Versa One platform, and it's something that is very real in what we deliver. It's not just the as you said, the AI wash that you may get
Right.
from some vendors, which used to be 5, 6 years ago, Aaron. It used to be the cloud wash, right? You were
Yeah.
dressing up on-premise applications as cloud in some shape or form, primarily because you were changing the purchase model from perpetual to subscription. So magically that migrated your applications to the cloud seemingly. And now AI, if you haven't got the words AI in your marketing, then you're falling short. But Versa genuinely has AI capabilities deeply embedded in what we do.
Yeah, I mean the buzzwords have been there, and I do see it just used a lot of times as just, hey, we have to have it and we have to throw it out there, regardless of whether we actually know, how it works in our platform or that's even actually there. So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
appreciate that. Clearly, Versa knows how to leverage AI, and I'm sure that will just compound over time. Speaking of compounding over time, so give us a little bit about what's next for Versa.
Yeah, I think what's next is in many ways what we've articulated in our announcement today, which is the whole concept of the self-protecting network, which is building on the concept of the convergence of networking security that's evolved to universal SASE, which is evolving now to this broad architecture that encapsulates automation, which is really key, and the use of AI for anomaly detection, threat detection, and performance degradation. And then ultimately, the ability to use AI not only to identify, but also to remediate. And that's the vision that we've got for the Versa One platform. And so I think you'll see us putting a lot of emphasis into delivering those capabilities, as I say, across the entire network, as you rightly said, integrating security as a key philosophy into how you deploy your network, ensuring that the performance is optimal, that user customer experience is optimal, and using those concepts of automation and AI in order to facilitate that. And that's fundamentally what the Versa One platform is all about.
Yeah. Yeah, security should never be an afterthought. Always needs to be a forethought. And that's a great approach. I appreciate that. Hey, Martin, I've taken up a lot of your time today, but the conversation has just been fascinating. So I went well over the time we normally would budget for a podcast. I try to keep, things to about 30 minutes, but it's rare to get somebody of your stature to be able to come in and just have a discussion that's this lengthy and this open and straightforward. But before we go, I would like to just ask you, are there any things that you'd like to share, that I haven't asked, that we haven't covered, that you think is pertinent?
That's a great question. Thank you so much for asking. I think, there are a couple of things that make me really excited about Versa. And the first is probably the customer retention, which is reflected in our net revenue retention and what customers say about us, our referenceability. And that's ultimately, you and I were talking before about why we do this job. And I think ultimately delivering value to customers is the most exciting thing we can do. And we hear that all the time. But I think the other thing is the validation from the external experts. We are positioned in Gartner's 3 SASE Magic Quadrants, leader in SD-WAN and a challenger niche player in the other 2, but going up and to the right. We have Cyber Ratings, a really interesting agency because they test the products in the real world, and they've just given us, for SD-WAN and Zero Trust and Firewall, the AAA rating, which is just endorsing, if you like, the power of the technology. And then one that I really like, actually, Frost & Sullivan just gave us SD-WAN Vendor of the Year. Which is, again, I come back to the fact that we are the only SASE player that originated in the networking market. And I think that gives us a competitive advantage because ultimately, understanding how the network operates, I think is at the heart of every enterprise. And then, as we said, securing that is key. But that convergence, if you understand both, which we do, you've got the chance of being successful. So thanks for asking that question. But what excites me is both the customer reception and the industry expert or analyst reception. And then ultimately, Aaron, I'm not just saying this, I'm really, really excited by the relationships that we're building with our key partners like XenTegra, because, as I say, we will not scale and be successful unless we have incredibly tight relationships with those market influencers. And so thank you for the support that you've given us.
Yeah, and thanks for kind of talking about a few of those things that we've seen. I've mentioned a few, whether it be you're in the top 10 or you're talking about the AAA rating you just received, where you're at in the Magic Quadrant. Every report I see that comes out that says something about SASE, Versa is always there, and Versa is always there as one of the leaders in that group. So, SASE basically is now synonymous with Versa, or Versa is now synonymous with SASE. So, absolutely appreciate it, Martin. Your time is very valuable, and thanks for spending it with me. So we're going to go ahead and wrap up. As I said, we're quite a bit over what we normally would be, but the conversation has just been thrilling, and I appreciate it. So to all our listeners, stay informed, stay connected, and stay secure.